Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax while we take a look at what is happening up in the stars above us for the week ahead. And unlike the other weeks in January so far, this week is quite powerful and quite busy with a lot of different aspects happening between planets, with the sun ingressing into Aquarius later today, with Mercury ingressing into Aquarius tomorrow, with the Human Design new week on Thursday. And actually, we're not going to talk about this much today, but on Friday, Mars moves into Aquarius, creating a huge stellium in the sign of the future and the sign of humanity. And wow, right? We've just got a pile of planets that are moving into this very powerful sign of Aquarius. And then, as we were talking last week, I totally didn't get an opportunity to share with you about the human design of this week, which actually began on the 17th or on Saturday. So I want to start this morning there so that you have an idea of the energy that we're in now that's leading us into the human design new year. So let's start there, shall we? Good morning to everybody who's checking in. I see Julie out there. Yes. Yeah. I love it that you had a Reiki session afterwards. That's probably the best thing, right? Clearing off some of that stagnant energy or old beliefs energy. And Terry, hello to you and others that are behind the scenes that I cannot see who you are yet. So I hope everybody had a great weekend. I had an interesting weekend. We got locked here into our RV with everybody else from the household gone, and it was hysterical. We thought it was ice because it's been rather chilly at night and icy, and so we waited until, it would get a little bit warmer outside, but apparently it was a mechanism in the door. It wasn't ice, and we had a neighbor come over to try to let us out. We contemplated jumping out windows. Not such a good plan for me, or my husband, really. And finally, Terry gets the door open, the mechanism pops or something, and he's able to get out. And then he closes it to see if he can get back in. And guess what? Now he's locked outside and I'm locked inside. And it was just crazy. And then finally, the rest of the family got home. The youngers jumped in the window, came in and started messing with the mechanism on the inside, while the other two adult men were out there messing with the mechanism on the outside. Finally, we get the door open. Terry discovers the problem, fixes it. So consequently, I can now get in and out if I need to without too much trouble. It was just so funny, though, being locked in and thinking, what is this saying about the old moon? Because we hadn't gotten to the new moon yet. And the moon was in Capricorn, which of course was structure and form, and the sustainability of something. Like, these little things keep happening like that here. It makes me think, like, you got to have a contingency plan. Like, if you get locked in or locked out, what are you going to do? Right. So now we leave one window sort of unlocked so that a younger person, a smaller person, can jump in to the window to get us back in. It was just kind of crazy. But of course, then that leads us to Saturday night's win by the Seahawks. Yes, it was awesome. And then yesterday, busy day, just a busy day. Everything that we didn't get done on Saturday, we had to do yesterday. So it felt like we were just breathless, running from one thing to another all weekend long. So last night I was like, oh, I'm really tired. Even though I didn't do a whole lot. All right. It seems like people are checking in. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual astrology and human design of this week ahead. So right now I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the human design chart for this week. And actually, I've got two pieces of information on this chart. Let me go over here to make sure everybody can see it. So I want you to take a look at the gates 56 up here in the top corner of the throat center, highlighted in blue, the light blue up here. And then down at the bottom, the gate 60, where on the root center where the sun is. So as we begin this new human design week, or we're 2 days into it now, the sun is in the gate 60, down on the root center, a pressure center, which is called the gate of conservation. And while then the sun is in that gate, the earth is up in the gate 56 on the throat center, called the gate of expansion, at least in quantum human design. Now, one part of you then this week is being asked to work with limits, with sort of restriction or with boundaries, while another part of you wants to break out and explore and tell a bigger story, right? We have expansion kind of sitting up against limitation. Limitation is the word for the gate in traditional human design, the gate 60, and the gate 60 in quantum human design is more about conservation. And this is not a contradiction in energies, although it might feel like that. It's really a creative pressure for us to grow and focus our energy in a specific energy or a direction, excuse me. So if we think about conservation, the gate 60 lives in the root center, and it's all about limits and boundaries and actually the acceptance of what is, right? Rather than breaking up or kind of pushing up against the boundary and yearning, let's say, to break free of that boundary, we're meant to learn about how to work within those boundaries, right? To work within the container so that the growth and expansion is directional, has a place to go, right? Has some kind of foundation in it to be able to sustain that expansion or that growth. Now, this energy is the energy that says not everything can happen right now. Sometimes things just aren't all lined up yet for that to happen. And then not every idea is ready yet. And there are real constraints. We live in a physical realm, and the constraint may be time, it may be energy, it may be resources, or it may just be your capacity to be able to do or sustain any kind of real growth. So the gate 60 teaches us something essential, and that is that limits aren't punishments, but they're stabilizers. They're the foundation builders, right? They're the thing that allows us to grow and stretch and get beyond where we are. So we're working within what's available energetically, resource oriented, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And we're making peace with the current conditions that we find ourselves in, rather than, bristling at the limitation or yearning to break free of that limitation. We're working within that structure. And then we let the pressure of that root center, because it's a pressure center, the stress of doing something, we let that mature rather than forcing outcomes, right? Rather than forcing something to happen. And if you try to push past the limits this week, frustration will show up quite fast. And yet when you honor the container that you're in or the restraints that you find yourself in, something begins to crystallize. Something begins to grow within those boundaries. If you've ever grown crystals like rock candy, this is a great one, right? Rock candy. You can, pour water and sugar in a cup, and nothing is going to happen with crystals, right? Nothing will happen with crystals until you put like a wick or some like material, like a string or something in there for the crystals to coalesce around. And that's kind of this idea that we have this week, right? Is that we have to wait for something that the matrix can grow around, right? And once we have that, it begins its expansion process. But if you try to push beyond that and make something happen, it just doesn't happen. And then we get frustrated, right? Or we get upset and we throw everything out with the throw the baby out with the bathwater. But when you honor the container and the strength of, being within that foundation or being within those boundaries, then something begins to crystallize, right? It grows. And again, this isn't stagnation. This isn't, just a holding pattern necessarily. It's the compression that we need before movement can take place, right? That's keeping us in these boundaries. Now, that's the sun. The sun is sitting at the gate 60. And the Earth is up in the gate 56, and 56 sits on the throat center. We often think of the 56 as the gate of the storyteller. There's a narrative here, right? There's this teaching energy in this gate 56. Now, this is where the balance to the gate 60 happens, because if the gate 60 is constriction, not quite constriction, it's limitation, then this is the gate of expansion. And it is the explorer of new ideas. And it shares the experiences of the container. It shares the experience of the out of limitation, this happened or this grew. And then with the Earth in this gate, we find meaning through curiosity and perspective and looking at things differently. And that's a great thing for human beings, right? Because we can often get stuck in the story. And this is the invitation to get out of the old story and see something new that's occurring. So while the Sun this particular week says, slow down and stay within the limits or stay within the lines, the Earth says, but don't lose your vision, right? Don't lose the story. The thread is still there. We're just having to coalesce something first, right? So the gate 56 is what grounds us this week. And it grounds us by reminding us why the limitation exists. Why are we slowing down, or why are we staying contained? And then also reminds us about what we're learning from the experience. What is it that we're designed to learn from the constriction or from the limitation? I don't want to get confused with gate 25 of constriction. 60 is limitation. And then to find out how your experience fits into the larger narrative or the larger story, the evolutionary story perhaps of your life, the evolutionary story of the collective, or just what it is that this is pointing to within the limits of the experience that you're having. Now, this is not expansion through action. This isn't the, if I had my stop and go, right? This is not the go sign. It's expansion through understanding what it is these limits are asking of you, and understanding that those limits support the eventual expansion out into the world of that idea or that project. Now, together, these two ask an important question of us, right? Can you accept what is without losing your sense of possibility? Can you be here in this now moment with the limits that are apparent, but still hold on to the vision or the dream of what is to be, of what it is you're trying to create? So this is a week for making peace with the constraints, right? Making peace with what it is that you have to hold on to or be within. Letting curiosity replace that frustration. And it's a week for allowing perspective to grow, even if the circumstances haven't changed yet, because they will, right? We like change is the one rule of the universe, right? So if you're feeling stuck or boxed in or impatient, right? That's the gate 60 talking, right? That's the gate 60 saying, but wait, we're not ready yet. Something else is happening. Something else needs to happen. And if you're feeling reflective or philosophical or drawn to making meaning of something, then that's the gate 56 grounding you, letting you know that there's more to the story that has not yet been experienced or has not yet been shown to you. So the wisdom of this week, as we're leading into the Human Design New Year, isn't about doing more. It's about understanding more, right? Understanding more for yourself. And you don't need to escape your limits this week. That isn't the message. You need to listen to what it is that they're actually shaping in your life. What is it actually shaping? And expansion isn't always about movement. It's not about the physical expansion of moving something. It can sometimes be about the story you're living inside the pause. And how is that growing your understanding in you, yourself, or in your life, right? So it's a very important part of the story before we get to that Human Design New Year. All right, so now, as we move through this particular week, it might be really good if we take a deeper look, a more frequency look, or a look at the frequency band. And the look at the frequency band of this week, we need to look at the gene keys, right? Because the gene keys show us in very clear language what the shadow energy is, what the gift energy is once we move up out of the shadow, and what the siddhi energy is when we can utilize that particular energy in its highest, right? So the gene key 60 is the shadow of restriction, where we feel sucked in, like we feel like we can't move, right? I've been like bucking against restrictions of crutches, right? I just want to throw them, but I cannot yet do that, right? It's not, the structure in my knee is not ready for me to let go of those crutches yet. Then the gift energy becomes realism in the gate 60 or gene key 60. And then in its highest energy, it becomes the siddhi of justice. So at the shadow level, the gate 60 can feel tight, right? It can feel constrained. And this is where restriction shows up as frustration, where we get really frustrated because we feel stuck. We can't do anything. And then we ask, why can't this change already, right? Why can't I throw these crutches away now? And then we may feel boxed in or delayed or stuck, right? We're just kind of in this holding pattern. And restriction feels personal when it's actually structural, right? It feels like you're being caught in something. Like, we had a conversation with someone on Friday about, feeling like, God is holding her back or holding her down or trying to teach her a lesson or something like that. And it's about being in the right moment for the structure to support the next steps or to support the next move. Now, when we move into the gift of realism in the gate 60, something really shifts, because realism says, this is what's workable right now. This is the space you can be in right now. These conditions matter, right? These conditions really hold some weight in your life. And clarity comes from honesty, but not wishful thinking. You can't wishfully think yourself out of those crutches, Janet, right? No matter what you try to wish them away, you need them, right? I need them. But realism is deeply stabilizing. Even if it is feeling like, throwing water on the fire, it's really deeply stabilizing. And it helps you to stop fighting the container and start using it wisely, right? Use the energy that you have wisely. And at its highest expression, the gate 60 moves toward the siddhi of justice, but not justice as punishment. We're not talking about, like in a court of law where punishment is meted out. We're talking about natural order, the natural order of the universe, the natural order of timing, and the understanding that limits exist for alignment. And that timing is intelligent. There is some intelligence working for you, on your behalf, for your benefit. And what unfolds then does so with purpose. And there's meaning and there's purpose behind it. And this week, that gate 60 or gene key 60 asks, can you trust that the boundary you're inside is shaping something fair, balanced, and necessary so that you can move forward when the timing is right? Now, if we look at the gene keys through the gate 56, the one on the throat center here that leads up toward the ajna, the gate 56 shadow is distraction, where the gift is enrichment, and the siddhi or highest expression is intoxication. Kind of these three, this gate always gets me because these three words feel like they're like not quite in a coherent pattern, but they are when you really step back and look in. The gate 56 just brings this very different flavor to the table. At the shadow level, expansion becomes distraction, where there are too many ideas, too many stories, and looking outside of yourself for stimulation or escape rather than staying within the container. Coming up against that edge so tightly that you just go somewhere else to release that to release that tension, but that is exactly the distraction that you don't need. And distraction often shows up when limits feel uncomfortable or that we've been in those limits for too long. But the gift of enrichment in the gate 56 here really shines, because here the experience becomes meaningful. Like everything starts to make sense. It's insightful and it's integrative. And enrichment doesn't require travel or change or big moves. It comes from digesting life consciously, digesting the meaning behind the experience consciously. Now, when we get to the Siddhic level or the Siddhi, this gate moves into intoxication. Such an interesting word, because most of us would think of intoxication as a lower level energy, but here it's the highest level energy, because it's not escapism, it's rapture almost, or ecstasy almost, where the state of being so present in life that meaning flows naturally, right? It just flows naturally, where the story becomes wisdom, right? Everything, all of those experiences that you've turned into a story about who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, become wisdom. And then experience becomes devotion. And gate 56 grounds you this week by saying, even here, especially here in the container, there is something really rich for you to receive, whether it's wisdom or knowledge or insight. So the alchemy of this particular human design week is about the magic of the gate 60 limits the form, right? It keeps us in the boundaries. And the gate 50 expands the meaning so that we understand what it is that the boundaries are teaching us. And you may not be able to change the circumstances this week, but you can change your relationship to those circumstances. You can change the way you think about those circumstances. And this is a week then to stop pushing against what's immovable. Tough for humans, right? This is a week to let curiosity replace resistance. Be a little bit open-minded. I'm curious about what it is that this is leading me to, and allow perspective to expand where action cannot, right? If you cannot take action yet, what can expand within you in terms of understanding? And, where am I experiencing restriction in my life? And what truth is that limit asking me to face? What do I have to see within that limitation? And how can I enrich this particular moment rather than escaping it, right? We don't want to escape it. We want to learn from it. So this actually, this pairing of gates actually sets us up quite nicely for Aquarius season, which also begins today. What's forming now, right, within us is inside constraint and inside reflection. So we have this inner thing going on that's helping us to get clear about what those next steps are going to be. And it's preparing us for the mental, social, and future-facing shifts that Aquarius brings to us next. And it limits, the limits clarify, like, this is the road, right? Staying on the road, right? We don't need to stray off into the other sides, because if we do, we might hit bumps or we might end up rolling the car, right? Meaning expands during this period of time. And together, they really prepare the way forward for all of us as we enter into the sun in Aquarius. And of course, not just the sun, quite a number of planets that have entered into the sign of Aquarius. Okay, so let's take a quick moment to say good morning to everybody that's popping in. I saw Terry out there this morning. Good morning to you. And Julie, good morning to you. Christine, nice to see you. Leilani, oh my gosh, Leilani, I did get your message. I went back to find that message so I could answer it, and I don't know where it went. So just I want to let you know how much it meant to me to read that, and how you just don't know how it uplifted me in a time of me questioning everything about who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going, how to live my life, and being really very fearful about it within me, right? I know I come on here and I'm all smiles and talking and chattering, but I'm just like you guys. I feel the fear. I feel all of the same feels. So your message was just so empowering, and I loved it. Thank you so much. Everyone thumbs up this video, make my work go. Thank you so much for that reminder, Leilani. And Asa, great to see you this morning. Great to have you with us, and happy new moon, everybody. Yesterday was that new moon. And TD, Tamara, needed to hear this. Thanks for this reminder. I love it. That's the word I was looking for, rapture. I love the gene keys for this purpose, right? That words like sanctity and rapture and intoxication, it gives us access to new meanings, right? Because sometimes you think, to me, rapture was always like either uh, song, a song, what is her name, by Blondie, or it was something religious in nature, right? And I kind of reject religion, so I was like, "Nah." But this gives new meaning, gives a new excitement to it. And what about intoxication, right? Intoxication for most of us is like, over imbibing in alcohol or something, during party season. And intoxication here meaning something completely different. So I really just love those words. So because I'm also a Gemini, I love words. What can I say? All right, well, let's move over to the sun's move into Aquarius, which happens this afternoon or 5:45 p.m. tonight in the Pacific time zone, but 8:45 this evening on the east coast of the U.S. And Universal Time, that means it'll happen at 1:45 a.m. tomorrow morning for those of you in the further Eastern time zones. And this, to me, this is a time where the future becomes brighter or clearer, right? We're not necessarily talking about troubles lifting and that type of thing. I don't mean that at all, because I really kind of think they're kind of crystallizing and becoming very much more to the point of what it is that we need to do. But Aquarian energy really gives us this access to the future, right? We start to really look ahead. Interesting, because January is, it was named after the god Janus, who was a two-faced god, two faces, one face to the future and one faced to the past. And isn't it interesting that we have, in the month of January itself, the two faces, right? The face that was Capricorn, which is looking more to the traditional and more to the past and what we've set up and what the foundations that have been built. And then we switch over to Aquarius, which is very much about, now we build for the future. Now we look for the ideal. And now we, see things in a new way, and maybe more objectively, maybe more humanitarianly. And that is an interesting thing to see, right? The two different faces right here in the month of January. So tonight, as the sun moves into Aquarius, then if we draw up a chart for that moment, we get to take a look at what the energy, at least for the time that the sun is moving through Aquarius, will look like. So I'm going to pull up the chart here for everybody so you can see what this ingress chart looks like. And the first thing that you might note over on the right side, how many planets are on that side of the chart, right? Almost all of them that are on, if you draw the horizon line right from the top here at Taurus, down to Sagittarius, down here at the bottom, you can see that you've got almost all the planets here. The only planet that's really on the other side is the planet Jupiter. All the other planets are in the Eastern Hemisphere, or Western Hemisphere, excuse me. And to me, that's always fascinating, right? We see things are a little bit tilted. It's like the Earth is tilted. It's tilted to the west, and that's funny. That is so funny, because even in, like, I'm probably more of a sports freak than you guys are, but notice that the top teams, 3 of the top teams, come from the West Coast, right? They're in the Western Conference. The Rams from Los Angeles, the San Francisco 49ers, who are out now because they lost to us on Saturday. And then the Seahawks, the Western Seattle team. So 3 teams from this one conference in the top seeds. Fascinating, right? And then we see this chart that's unbalanced to the west. And think about it from the worldview right now. There's a lot of dominance happening, attempted dominance happening from the west, primarily from the USA at this point in time. Not a value statement, by the way, just a observation, right? What's happening here. So as we start to move these planets into the sign of Aquarius, and look, we have 2 more. We have Mars and Mercury that this same week are also going to move into Aquarius. So then we are going to have this huge stellium in the sign of Aquarius. And it immediately is occurring, that the sun moving into Venus and Pluto at the 3rd degree, right now the sun will be tonight at 0 degrees, brings up this energy about deep transformation for us. And when Venus is involved, we're talking about a transformation of this. It's in the 6th house of the chart. The 6th house is about health and well-being. It's about our daily routines and our daily habits and the things that we do without even thinking, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you go to get dressed, and then you start your day. It is also the house of work and employment and service, how we give back and how we organize our lives and our daily systems, our big systems. It has a lot of potential for us to reestablish healthy rhythms and health and well-being. Now, that's from the collective point of view. Now, in your own personal chart, Aquarius is somewhere. It might not be in the 6th house. In my chart, it's in the 8th house. It might be in the 1st house in your chart, which would give you an opportunity to develop a new you, right? To really become your most genuine, unique, eccentric even self. Maybe you have it in the 4th house, which is going to impact your home and your family and your traditions and the beliefs that you've built about yourself in this particular life. What if it's happening in your 10th house, right? All these planets coming to a 10th house would really focus on career and profession and your inner authority and how you express that authority to the world, how you're seen in the world, the outer world. So all of us have Aquarius somewhere in the chart. It just so happens that this is the chart of this now moment, or of the moment that the sun turns into, or moves into, not turns into, but moves into Aquarius, and that will be in the 6th house. So in the bigger extreme picture of what's going on in the world, it'll be about a focus on health and well-being and routines and service and things like that. But for you, it might really be focusing on something totally different, right? So there we have it. Now, Aquarian energy, sometimes as we think about Aquarius energy, we think of it as cold or as standoffish. And in a way, there is, that quality sometimes of that, standing back. It is an objective sign. And it often gets described as detached or impersonal, but that's not quite right. Aquarius is about systems and how they get, distributed. How do the resources get distributed throughout the humanity? And it can be about our healthcare systems, our social systems, our work systems, and their community support structures and all of that, right? It can really be about building those things, but making them more sustainable. Saturn still rules here in the more traditional sense. So how do we sustain them for the future? Right? Not necessarily just right this moment, but where we are in this moment, and how do we build to a more sustainable future? And with the Sun, Venus, and Pluto together already, the Sun will be at 0, then Pluto, Venus at 3, Mercury joins the party tomorrow, and Mars joins the party on Friday. We are going to have a lot of focus on the future and what is no longer sustainable, what cannot happen now that will support the future, and what wants to be redesigned. We have a great opportunity to redesign, and it's not about the collapse of the old just for the sake of collapse. It's really about the truth telling. We have to look at these things honestly, brutally honestly, so that we can, determine what fits and what doesn't fit, and what is sustainable and what is not sustainable. We have to expose that underbelly, and you see it happening everywhere, and then reform that system or that product or what have you, right? And it's really kind of interesting when you think about the whole, if you remember back in September, we were talking about how Pluto had moved into a declination that was extreme, and the extreme of that declination was reform. Well, since then, of course, Pluto's declination has come back into within those limits of the sun, but that he will also wander outside of those limits once more when we get into September and October of this year. So what is it? So we have a breathing room, let's say, to really expose what isn't working and to really begin the process of dismantling that consciously so that we can rebuild it consciously, right? Rebuilding is the natural opposite of the destruction, right? But it has to be dismantled first. Now, Pluto in this mix doesn't just destroy willy-nilly, it destroys what's out of sync, what's outgrown its integrity, what's no longer tenable, and exposes it first. It's not always just destruction in the first, right? It's often exposure first, and then we get to choose, what do we do with that? Now, I also noticed that the moon, today at least, is in Aquarius, and so is Pallas Athena, and we haven't talked about her much lately. But as we add to the weight of these planets that are all moving in, we'll have the moon there at least today and into tomorrow, and Pallas Athena will be there for a little bit yet. And it amplifies the tone of this week, but also amplifies the tone of the movement of the sun into Aquarius. So the moon here suggests that there's emotional awareness around collective issues, that there are certain like fire things out there that are stimulating our awareness around and emotions around a particular issue, right? Minnesota right now seems to be this flashpoint here in the United States and everything that's going on there. There's a sensitivity by the people to the conditions that are creating these moments. And the emotion around that is becoming more external, more explosive, even more loud in its expression. And there's a feeling of something is shifting. Something is shifting, but what is it yet? It's not quite clear, but something is shifting. And then Pallas Athena, she brings strategic intelligence to the table, right? She's a strategist. She holds wisdom, the wisdom of experience and the wisdom of the mind when it's working on and firing on all of its cylinders correctly. She holds pattern recognition. Ah, I've seen this before, right? This is a pattern that is repeating in my own life. What is going on here? And how do I break this pattern? Or how do I, steer this pattern in a new direction? She has also the ability to see how change can happen, not just that it must, right? How could this get better? How could we make this better? And this pairing really supports wise, future-oriented solutions to the problems that we have, not reactive chaos, right? And right now it looks like reactive chaos from, everything that we see going on out there is chaotic, right? So the stellium of Aquarian planets, including Pallas and the moon today, but then eventually Mercury and Mars, as the moon moves on, Mercury and Mars will replace her. It becomes more action-oriented. So we're going to be asked to really make some changes, to take some actions that support a future, a calmer, more peaceful future. And then we'll have, some time to look at the future and to look at the impact of everything that's going on humanity and innovation. Don't forget, Aquarius energy in the modern is ruled by Uranus, the planet of innovation, of surprises, of the out of the blue, out of the box thinking kind of thing. And collective evolution is a part of all of this as well, as humanity moves in a new direction. And it can feel very daunting because it's so, I don't know. I mean, just so crazy. Some things are so crazy out there. But Pluto doesn't whisper, right? He's really insistent about us taking a look at those shadows. But it's also hopeful, right? I had a moment yesterday, and trust me when I say I don't believe for one instance that the President of the United States is really intent on peace. But creating a peace department or an arm of something that is about peace, I saw that just in passing, and before I got jaded by what I read later, I was like, wow, okay, maybe he is picking up something that is necessary for our evolution. And then I realized he wanted to sell the seats like at $1 billion a piece to be a part of that panel of people. But it's out there. right? The idea of peace and actually having a department of peace is out there. Marianne Williamson is, for me, the first one who ever brought this up, right? And how would that change the world if we were focused on peace rather than focused on war and all of the corporations that, of course, push for that because their profits are all about that. They're based on war. What would it look like to have profits based on peace, right? It would be totally different. And Aquarius reminds us here at this particular time that no one evolves alone, right? We do have our own personal evolution, but we are as a collective evolving as well. And that change that is happening as we evolve is happening through networks and ideas and shared vision, right? It's when all of humanity comes together. So the promise of this moment is not about sudden perfection, because that's elusive. It's not there. It's about direction. It's what begins now as we look at this period of time, maybe is supporting a long-term reorientation toward systems that support life, toward work that aligns with values. I read another interesting article. I live in Washington State, and just to the west of me is a group of islands, one of which is called San Juan Island. And it was so interesting to see that the San Juan County has decided to adopt a 32-hour work week because they find that their employees get much more work done in those 32 hours because they have now 3 days off than they were getting done in 40 hours. What an aha, what an insight. And I'm sure that as time goes on, that will begin to spread to other places, and it makes more sense, right? 2 days versus 5. I mean, come on, right? It makes sense. So there are things that are aligning with different values and communities that are being built on fairness and not just, the extraction of time and energy and money from resources and so forth. But we don't know how. We don't have to know how all of this is going to happen. We don't need to. We just need to notice where our attention personally is being drawn. As I'm speaking to you as a person that's out there experiencing this, notice where it is that you're being drawn. What is important to you? And that's where the sun is shining for you. And that's where Pluto is working for you. That's where Mercury, Mars, and Venus are also bringing truth. It's emerging through whatever house you have Aquarius in. And that's where your power is being reclaimed. Okay. Now, if this energy feels intense today, actually this whole week, it might feel a little intense. That's okay. It really is okay. You're not meant to carry the future alone. You're not meant to, you are meant to participate in it, to question it, to imagine something new, and to choose alignment over fear. That's the beginning of this new Aquarian chapter. That while the work is real, we're tapping into the possibility, right? Possibility versus what is. And I noticed also during this particular week, I'm going to bring the chart up one more minute here so you can see this, that this combination of Pluto, Venus, and the sun in Aquarius, so off to the right side of this chart, are connected by this blue line to the black moon Lilith that is also sitting at the 3rd degree or in the 3rd degree of Sagittarius. And I thought that was fascinating because the black moon and this sun, Pluto, Venus thing, they're in a sextile. And a sextile is a harmonizing aspect. And if you'll remember, the black moon Lilith is the piece that gives us permission to live our truth, to live our authentic self. She's the piece that sometimes feels a little wild, feels a little radical, but she takes a stand. She takes a stand for herself. And that sextile is supportive, right? So we're being supported even as all of these planets begin this move into Aquarius energy. We're being supportive. It's creative and it's participatory, meaning you're being asked to play in this sandbox, not just sit there, right? And it says something wants to move, but you must engage with it consciously. So in your own chart, where Aquarius is in this, Aquarius planets in the sextile to the black moon Lilith, what can you engage in consciously? And in Sagittarius, the black moon is about truth, right? Truth that refuses to be domesticated, diluted, dumbed down. It is the authentic, real truth, where moral authority is reclaimed from external systems, from other people's voices, claiming your own authority, where there is a deep instinct for what's right, not just what's legal or what's accepted. What's right? What is the correct thing? And Lilith here will expose false narratives. That's her job. She's exposing the truth in the sign of Sagittarius. She's also exposing hypocrisy in belief systems, right? This is my issue with religion, right? They're always talking about, oh, love is the greatest thing. And then they support things like war and killing and anti-Muslim or anti-gay or anti-whatever, right? I just can't square that. I just can't square it. So therefore, to me, religion is not real, right? Love is real, but religion is not, in my personal belief system, that because of that hypocrisy. And any place where truth has been filtered or edited or controlled, this is where Lilith is out there just beating her drum. She is the untamed truth teller. And the sextile connecting her to those Aquarius planets, Pluto especially, transforming the systems that are not in truth. Venus redefining the values toward truth, redefining our values and our worth, aligning with truth. And the Sun illuminating what must be seen. What are we not looking at? And the sextile to Lilith tells us that the transformation is not disconnected from the truth. It is powered by the truth. And this is not change opposed from top down, right? That's not the right way that this works. This is change that's emerging from your lived truth, from moral or ethical clarity, and from inner authority. What's your inner truth? And what that means for us collectively is that this aspect between these planets right now really speaks the truth that catalyzes reform. I keep expecting that somebody out there is going to become the Martin Luther King of our time, that is going to speak the truth of the dream and is going to make it real for us. I haven't seen that person yet. I don't even know who those potential people might be or the possibility, but I know that likely somebody is going to step up here. And maybe it's going to be humanity altogether that steps up. Maybe it's not just one person, but maybe it's the group that says we will not tolerate this anymore, and we make this change. So we have this values-based restructuring of systems going on and potentially happening. We have the courage to challenge narratives that are no longer holding any kind of water. They're not holding any kind of integrity. And ethical awakening within collective change, right? Okay, yeah, change is necessary. And how do we excavate the old and build something that's new and more ethical, more in alignment? So something that's so Lilith here, bringing honesty, the fire of Sagittarius, bringing that honesty and that soul level consent to build from a truth, not from falsehoods. And any kind of transformation that is not rooted in truth will not last. It's doomed, right? So it's an important part of this whole Aquarius dynamic that we are entering into at this moment in time. Now, Mercury enters into Aquarius tomorrow. So we have, these big moves that are happening with the planets that are personal, right? These are personal planets. So it affects you personally as well as the collective. And Mercury is governing our thinking and our perception and how it is that we communicate and how we converse with one another. And information and media and learning and decision making are all, Mercury ruled things. And when Mercury is in Aquarius, the mind lifts out of the personal and into the collective. So you might hear people out there in the world talking more about the collective or about the bigger picture or about the larger body of humanity. And this is not emotional thinking. Aquarius is an air sign. It's about pattern thinking, right? Thinking in this pattern. So Mercury in Aquarius encourages us to be much more objective taking an objective perspective on the things that we're hearing, the things that we're seeing, but also to employ innovative problem solving, right? How can we solve this creatively? Not from the same level in which the problem was created, but from above it, right? How can we see it differently from a different perspective, a different facet? And the willingness to question assumptions, and as well thinking beyond tradition, behind the habits that we've established in our thinking patterns, like the way it's always been done. How do we look beyond that? How do we be outside of that particular kind of thinking dilemma? So Aquarius Mercury asks, what if there's a better system? Let's think more along those lines. And what if we approached this differently? What if we turned it upside down and looked at it from a different perspective? One of my favorite memes is of a giraffe turning its head upside down and looking. That's so Aquarian to me, right? To see things from a different perspective. And that means this time that we're moving into is less about certainty and much more about possibility. We left certainty behind with Capricorn. And now we're moving into uncertainty, but it's very hopeful, right? It's very objective if we can see things from a different perspective. So there's a gift and there's a caution as we really move into this Aquarius season. The gift of Mercury in Aquarius is clarity through detachment, through stepping back and seeing from a different perspective. If you can step back and see the bigger picture, you understand maybe in a different way how all the pieces fit together. And the caution is becoming overly intellectual, trying to intellectualize things, maybe becoming dismissive of feelings, because air is very much more about the thinking process, about information. It's a lot drier energy than the emotional energy is. And it's maybe another worry is about becoming too idealistic or too abstract, right? Then we make things too complex and make it harder to solve problems from that. So the invitation for us as we begin to make this move, not only from the human design energy that we talked about first today, but as we move into this Aquarian energy, is to think clearly without disconnecting from your humanity or from your fellow humans. So it's a big ask. It's a big job for all of us as we move through these subsequent weeks and days of Aquarian energy. Now, I also wanted to quickly talk about the Human Design New Year because I want to get something clear for you guys. But first, let me take a look and see if there are any questions before I jump off into that. Christine, the 32-hour work week without reduction in pay. Absolutely. There was no reduction in pay. And that's what Bernie Sanders has been trying to promote for many years. Well, it looks like, San Juan County or San Juan Island took them up on that. Just the county itself, it's not mandated that all employers work that kind of week, but that is the first step. I think it's good to see that out there. And that's why I love the Buddhist monks and their dog Aloka walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. for peace. They're literally walking their talk. I like that. Good morning, Paulette Peasley. And okay, great. I don't see any other questions. If I've missed your question, you might have to come back or post it again. So the Human Design New Year begins on the 22nd, so Thursday. And of course, we've already had our calendar New Year. Now we have this Human Design New Year. And eventually, as we get into March, the spring equinox, we have the astrological or zodiacal New Year. So I wanted to distinguish the difference between these calendars. So the Human Design New Year is not a calendar New Year, right? It is not. It is not the astrological New Year. And it's not a fresh start as we think of New Year's as being, a fresh start. Instead, the Human Design New Year actually marks a shift in the background frequency of life itself. Let me say that again. It marks a shift in the background energy of life itself, the background frequency of life itself. So the Human Design New Year begins when the sun moves into the gate 41. So we talked about the sun in the gate 60, which was the gate of contraction or conservation. The gate of 41, where the new year begins, is called the gate of imagination, right? The gate of fantasy, of seeing something, imagining something better. And it's the energetic seed point of new ideas and new cycles. In your very DNA, the gate 41 represents the start codon. It's the start codon that begins a new cycle or begins a new building of an amino acid that codes for something in your body. And rather than saying, let's start over or anything like that, the Human Design New Year says a new story is beginning to unfold. And it's more subtle. This is more internal. And it's an imagination before it's viable or visible or actionable, right? That it's just if I can picture this in my mind, then I can build it, but maybe not today, right? So how does this differ from other of our calendars that we look at, right? The calendar new year is social and mental. We decide it's a new beginning arbitrarily. January 1 is a new beginning. It has no spirit to it. It has no real feeling to it. Now, the astrological new year, which begins when the sun moves into zero Aries, i.e. the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, it's energetic and it's initiatory, and action begins, right? Mars rules Aries energy. Mars is the action principle. So the zodiacal or the spring equinox is a time where the action begins. The Human Design New Year is the pre-action, right? It's the pre-game show, if you will. It's the moment where desire stirs within us. It's the moment where vision begins to seed, like it's being planted. It's where the longing and imagination awaken out of the darkness, right? We're moving out of the darkness. I mean, raise your hand if you're noticing that the days are getting a little bit longer, right? I noticed last night it was after 5 o'clock when it was dark, where before it was before 5 o'clock and it was dark. So at this point, nothing is really meant to be done yet. This is about what wants to be dreamed into creation. So this becomes a very much dream time as opposed to what most people think of as a new year, which is initiatory and action oriented. And why this matters is because we have this very powerful Aquarian stellium of planets astrologically right now. We have Pluto's early work in Aquarius that has been, this collective reorientation toward the future and what comes next. So the question that you should be asking yourself isn't really about what should I make happen, because that's not it. It's more about what future wants to live through me. What future wants to live through me? So this is a year definition moment. It's not a goal setting moment, but definition, like, oh, okay, let's define this. Let's see where this imagination is going. So the best way to honor the Human Design New Year is really going to be about paying attention to what you're imagining, what's been percolating in your mind, what's in your vision, what's been in your dreams. Notice what you're longing for. Listen to the quiet desires that don't yet have form. Because this is not about manifestation boards or vision boards or the pressure to decide anything. It's just about allowing the seeds to get planted, right? It's about, right now I've been dreaming about, not dreaming like when I go to sleep, but I've been thinking about like, what plants do I want to plant? How do I want to, use my planters that once we moved, they were already planted with flowers. But this year, what do I want to do with them? I'm in a different environment. I have different potential, different points of view because the sun hits differently here. So I've been dreaming, but I can't go plant them yet, right? It's frosty cold out there. If I could show you outside, it's icy. It's not the time to plant flowers, right? So the time that we're moving into isn't about the actual doing of these things, but the planting of the seeds, perhaps the design in your mind of what it is that you might want to do. And the interesting thing is that the gate 41 sun follows this gate 60 sun that we have for this week, where we're moving from limits to imagination. It's like the most fascinating thing, I think, in the Human Design year is that every year, the Human Design New Year follows on the heels of the gate 60's conservation, right? Or limitation. It kind of grows, the imagination grows out of those very limits that we've been talking about. So when we arrive at the gate 41 imagination on Thursday, it's not random, right? This is not some random thing that's suddenly happening. It's planned, right? So keep that in mind, right? This imagination that you have is born from the constraint that we have earlier in this week. And it's the pressure maybe to imagine something new, as the gate 41 does sit on the root center, a pressure center for doing. It's not you doing something because it's trendy or exciting, but because the old way no longer fits and you have a new idea of what it is that you would like to do. The gate doesn't arise from excesses. It really comes up out of the constraint, the conservation energy of the gate 60. In other words, imagination is not escapism. We're not meant to escape. It's the soul's response to limitation, right? I have this container. I have these boundaries, these limits. And in my mind, I have this dream. And how can I move that dream forward? All right. So there is so much more we could talk about here. And I think I'll have to wait till Friday for that because we're already a little after 9. But if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to me at living-astrology.com, Janet at living-astrology.com. And thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope you'll hit the thumbs up or the heart button, either in YouTube, the thumbs up, or on Facebook, the heart. And I look forward to seeing you all on Friday. Bye for now.